Hello, I'm Barry Redfern, and welcome to the Expat Show, the live show for English speakers and expats in Germany. We're a radio show, it's just we happen to have a few webcams in as well. And without further ado, let me introduce everybody today. So, joining us is Scott Haslett. Good evening, Scott.
Hello, thank you, Barry. Coming up later, we'll be going to Luxembourg, where top chefs from all over Germany are competing in the World Culinary Championships. We speak to Torben Grubnau from Niedersachsen, who's leading Germany's team from Lower Saxony. I know him personally. He's a great chef.
Right. And also joining us is Alicia Banfield. Hello, Alicia.
Hello, the Caribbean girl freezing her bun off in northern Germany, the same North Saxony. And pleased to be on a show as the anti-kitching advocate on a show about food. Looking forward to it.
I have to say, Alicia, you're looking very colourful in that red.
Ravishing.
And earlier you arrived with red glasses as well.
Yes, I did.
In a red car.
And in a red car.
And in a red car. And believe it or not, red is not my favourite colour, but yeah, I'm getting into the Christmas spirit.
Excellent. Right. Okay, more from Alicia a little later. And we'll also, a little later, be revealing some news most journalists seem to have ignored. It may well shock you. And I feel a little bit strongly about it, that the mainstream media has not been talking about this. And hence, ordinary people in the street can't talk about it either. So what's it all about? Find out. Stay with us. It's a very controversial issue.
It's hot.
And it is hot, as Alicia says. But first, we welcome a lady who competed against broadcasters from all over Germany to win the prize for the best interview on German radio. May I introduce Christine Hunfeld. Welcome to the Expat Show, Christine.
Thanks for having me.
Now, you won this prize for interviewing a homeless man, didn't you?
I did, yes. Actually, he wasn't homeless at the time. Are you catching me there on that mic? Lovely.
I am.
I'm sitting a bit far away from it, maybe.
Maybe if you could sit just a little closer.
Well, I sit a little closer. Okay,
Yeah.
Now I can hear myself better as well. Well, he wasn't homeless at the time I met him. He's written a book. I might hold
Yeah.
it into
Can we
the
have a
camera.
look
I
at
don't
that?
know if you can get
Can
it
you get
there.
that?
Right? Can you see the book? Anyway, his name's Dominic Blow, right? And actually one of my colleagues had the idea because she got the information about the book and she said, well, that could be an interesting person to talk to. So we met up in Hamburg in January. And Dominic would be 30-ish now, 30 or 31. And he spent about half his life on the streets, not permanently, not the whole time, but he got kicked out by his mum when he was 16. And mum was psychologically ill and she just couldn't cope. And couldn't cope with the son either, who wasn't the easiest child, I'd say. But anyway, so it started there that he basically had to spend nights on the street. Not every night. Sometimes he could stay with a friend and sometimes he could find some other place. But he was basically, half his life, he was homeless. And he talks about this story and his experiences and in this book, which is fantastic because it gives you an idea of, what life on the streets is like.
So you found this as a potentially good story. Had you any idea just how big this might be?
No, I thought, when I decide that, somebody is worth talking to, because the program, this particular program would be 1 hour and you've got about 38 minutes, up to 38 minutes to talk to somebody, and then you chop it up into whatever, 5 bits, and then there's music in between. So you always, look into the story and look at the person and figure out whether the person and the story is interesting enough to talk about for 38 hours. And I didn't have a problem, It took me a minute to
but
decide.
Surely
because
he's I gather he's a little bit of an introvert. So that can't be easy for doing an interview.
Well, he's a very quiet, soft-spoken, very soft-spoken. I think that describes it. Calm and, and he talks very slowly. But introvert, maybe not so much. And when I met him, he'd already given so many interviews because, a lot of the media, he was in the Spiegel, and this was on the Spiegel bestseller list, this book, So by the time, I'd say he was quite used to giving interviews, but he wouldn't be the person to jump at the red carpet,
Yeah.
Yeah, but he does talk about us, and he doesn't have any barriers, and this is a difficult story.
But how do you get into the mind of someone like that? Because your interview is not superficial. You're digging. How do you do that?
I don't know. I suppose it's just asking questions and being really interested in a person. I think that's what it is,
So do you don't go in with a plan? You go in and
I have a kind of a script, and I have a plan, because otherwise you might get, as we say in Plattdeutsch, from Höcksken up Stöcksken. Do you understand what I mean? So you don't want to jump too much from here to there, because you want the listener to be able to follow. And so I do have a plan, but then I let people talk, and I wait for whatever.
Pick up on cues.
I pick up on cues. Whatever you want to. The main thing is you listen to people.
Yeah. You got to let them talk and not
let them talk.
say everything already in the question.
Yeah. Okay. So. How do you decide what is going to be an interesting and engaging interview? How do you pick people to interview and go, okay, that'll be juicy. People will engage with that.
Well, I don't know. I don't have a scheme or anything, I just know from years of experience. I know, yes. And then sometimes, you do interviews with people that are really well known, that have done, written so many books or done so many films, and then it's usually quite obvious, For example, a few months ago, I did an interview with Elmar Wepper. I don't know if you're familiar with German TV. Yes, Scott here knows Der Alte and stuff like that. And he's really well known. He's in his 70s, I think he's 74 now. And so somebody said, one of my colleagues said, oh, would you want to do this interview with Elmar Wepper, because he's promoting his new film, and they got, contacted by the promotion people, whatever. And I thought, Elmar Wepper, am I really interested in Elmar Wepper? Because, of course, I remember him. Everybody my age does from television, And I thought, wow, he does a lot of telly, and I don't really know. But then, he did a few films for the cinema. And I think his first major part in a cinema, in a film, was when he was, what age was he? 70-something or 69 or whatever, and that was Doris Dörrie, Kirschblüten. I don't know if you remember that one, That would have been his first part a big part in the cinema. And then he did a few more films, and I saw one or two of them. And I looked up the film, and I looked up a few interviews, and I thought, Jesus, I'm sure he's really, really interesting.
Yeah.
So I looked them up, and I read a few interviews that he'd done, and I said, of course, He sounds like a really, really interesting person, and he was lovely.
Oh.
It was a lovely interview, and he was such a nice and interesting and smart person,
Do you have a long list of potential interviewees, or are you thinking?
No. I have lists. Yes, I have lists. But the trouble is the time, because preparing for these long interviews really.
How much preparation do you do?
Well, it depends. If you get somebody like Elmar Wepper, who's done, 3 films in the last whatever, you watch the latest film. That's one thing, and then I try to watch at least 2 or 3 more if I can, and then I look at bits on YouTube. The old bits, Der Alte. You find stuff on YouTube, and then you ring up the Radio Bremen archive people. And then you get 60, 80 pages, that you read.
It's
and
bedtime reading.
It depends.
Bedtime
You read
reading.
a lot, and then you think about, where am I starting and how am I going to do this? And like another really famous person would have been Ulrich Tukur. I know that I spent a week working on that one, because I don't just watch the latest film. You really try to
research
get
the person
deeply into things and try to surprise them, because these people have had to answer these questions so many times, and you don't want to bore them.
If you had, sorry to cut in, but if there was one interview that you would love to score, who would it be?
I suppose Joan Baez.
Why?
Because I always liked her. I actually saw her when I was 15 in Müngersdorfer Stadion in Cologne.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would be the first question you ask her?
Oh, I haven't thought about that. No, I haven't thought about that.
Okay.
No.
Have you ever, so that's going into the interview, have you ever been doing an interview and thought, oh God, will this never end?
Actually, just once, but it wasn't like I was bored or anything. It was just like the person, for some reason, didn't seem to want to talk. Now, of course, you being a presenter yourself, Barry, you must know. I don't know if you had situations like that.
I've had a few awkward moments.
But this was
more than my share, actually.
It was ages ago. It was ages ago.
Yeah. Well, how did you get through it?
I can't remember. It was such a long time ago. I know, and it wasn't my idea. It was, some producer decided we're going to have this person, and it was live. That was the trouble. You see, so we were live in the studio.
Yeah.
And your man wouldn't, he just didn't talk. I don't remember the details now. I can't remember what I did. I might have said, "Oh, well, just leave it then," It was
I know the feeling. I once did an afternoon show, on the radio, and the boss often used to drag people in from the TV station next door. And they'd have some famous person, and they'd drag him in and say, "Oh, Barry, I've got you so," and put them in, sit them in front, and I think, oh my goodness, I don't have any research, I don't have any notes. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Was that real life or was that nightmares?
It was live.
Yeah.
I had one guest who wasn't too happy, and another one who'd been a war correspondent. I'd actually read his books because my father had all his books, and I read them, and he was really surprised that I knew about him and everything.
No, people usually, or a lot of the time, a lot of people have said to me that I was really well prepared and all the rest of it. And I said, well, but of course, what else would I do? Of course, I'm well prepared. I mean, it's a matter of respect as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
But a lot of them say, you wouldn't believe, so they see all kinds of things.
Stupid questions.
But I think it is. It's a question of respect, for the person, but also for the listener. Why would I want to
waste their time
them with,
Right.
Yeah.
How far would you go to get an interview? Have you ever done anything weird and bizarre to get an interview, like hang out outside anyone's door? No.
No, I'm not like that, and it's not it's not that kind of radio. What we do.
Yeah.
You're not a door stopper, are you?
I'm not
we
a
call
door
them door
stopper.
stoppers.
No, I know, but speaking of door stoppers, no, but I did get an interview with somebody who didn't do interviews at the time, and that was Michael Fassbender, Irish actor.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I was at the Film Fly in Galway, which is a lovely film festival. And Michael was there. He was there to do an actor's kind of class, some workshop with students, right? Yeah. Master class, that's it. So I said, I must get an interview with Michael Fassbender. And that was, at the time, he wasn't that famous. He was just beginning to be famous. He was actually introduced in the Town Hall Theatre. And your man on the stage said, this might be your last chance to see Michael at home before he's off to Hollywood.
Oh.
So, and shortly after that, he was off to Hollywood. Wasn't he? Yeah. But at the time, he'd done, what's that Northern Irish film? Hunger, which is absolutely brilliant. Okay. He'd done Fish Tank, which I'd seen and I quite like. Andrea Arnold is the director, and Inglourious Bastards, which I gave a miss because I wasn't.
Inglourious Bastards?
Couldn't be bothered. Yeah, right.
It's great. Loved it.
Yeah. So, and then somebody said, yes, but he's not doing any interviews. I said, shite. I mean, he's here, I'm here, I must get it. And so the festival director at the time, Phelim, he said, you just give it a try. You see him coming out of the theatre, you just give it a try. And I did. And there was this producer, I think, big woman from Northern Ireland. She was kind of hovering. Because then he said, am I boring? No, because my stories can get long if you let me.
We're fascinated. Carry on. You can stay the night if you want.
It's Michael Fassbender. Yeah, you've got me hooked. Yeah.
But anyway, so I walked up to him on the steps of the Town Hall Theatre in Galway, and I said, I'm so-and-so and such, and would love to do, I know you're not doing interviews, but would you, maybe, And he looks at me and he says, really cool, he says, okay, 5 minutes. And I says, do you mean in 5 minutes, or do you mean you're giving me 5 minutes? And he says, I'm giving you 5 minutes.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. That's legendary.
So we walked over there, and this big woman from Northern Ireland, the producer, she was there all the time. She was kind of listening in, hovering, I felt. And I think she was, or she might have been afraid that he would get too political talking about Northern Ireland, because you see his dad is from Heidelberg.
Oh, okay.
And the mum is from Northern Ireland. And he was born in Heidelberg, and they moved to Ireland.
Oh, I didn't know that about him.
Killarney. Dad started a restaurant in Killarney, or took over a restaurant, whatever. And so he grew up in Ireland. No, in the Republic.
In the Republic
But he
of
was
Ireland.
born, he spent his first 2 years
Yeah.
in Heidelberg.
Yeah, lovely country.
So, yes, and so anyway, it's brilliant. That
excellent.
interview, and I managed to do something with it for actually NDR 1 Niedersachsen, a wee thing, a 2.5 minute little portrait for the Sunday afternoon program, which is lovely, and the interview turned out 11.5 minutes in the end.
Oh, great. Excellent.
Now, actually, you've been talking about Ireland, and your English is so good. You could be a Brit, but actually maybe not quite a Brit, because I detect an Irish accent there, very slight.
Yes.
Yeah. Have you spent a lot of time in Ireland?
Yes, well, a lot of time I wouldn't say, but I've been going to Ireland for a long time. My first time would have been when I was 17 in 1980.
So about 5 years. Oh,
Yes,
about 5 years ago.
Yes.
You like the country.
Yes. I met people from Ireland in Cologne when I was 16, hanging out on the Wallrafplatz listening to Buskers and stuff. And then I decided, and my best friend and her boyfriend, we all went the year after that.
So what are your favourite parts of Republic of Ireland?
I'd say the sunny southeast still, because I call that my second home. There's a village, Kilmore-Key, in the south, on the coast, which most people pass by. You know it.
I've trying to get away from my counsellors when I was doing my thesis. I took off and go, no, exams were too hard. I need to go and take a break. And a bunch of us, we were in Liverpool, got into the car, literally drove it onto the ferry, and decided, you know what, when we get off, we just got to drive around the coast. Right. It was absolutely stunning, breathtaking, the castles and the ruins and the landscape. Yeah, and the first place I started getting really fed up with rhododendrons, because I've never seen so many in my life.
With what?
Rhododendrons.
Along the rhododendron, yeah.
But actually, so I know the
rhododendron is not. It's pretty enough, but not very good, because they take over in the Woods Sea in Ireland. Been to the west, and there's bits where the rhododendron takes over.
Absolutely,
and they need to go and rip it out by hand.
It's very an invasive weed there, isn't it?
Absolutely.
In fact, the Irish government, a member of Parliament was talking about sending in the army to
to rip it out by its.
When was that? Was that a new thing?
That was last year, I think, or earlier this year. They said, "We'll send in the army."
Oh, it's probably because they wanted to sell the woods to Bertie Ahern's T-shirts company in Switzerland. Oh, there's lots of stories. But anyway.
So I did an interview here in Germany with someone from one of the forestry people. So I said, "So are you sending in the Bundeswehr to kill off all the rhododendrons?"
Interesting thought. Actually, the Irish woods, that's another. We leave that for
another day.
But the West Coast is fantastic.
It's gorgeous. It's stunning.
Yes, but I know the East Coast is not as spectacular. It's rather flat. It's a bit hilly, but you don't have these spectacular cliffs like in the West.
It's not as dramatic as the West Coast.
And but I love it because that's where I went the first time, and that's where I've loads of friends and a family, so to speak. The parents are long gone, but the kids are there, and it is like a second home. I was only 17 when I ended up there, and I kept coming back. And this village, Kilmore-Key, of course, it's changed quite a bit, but anyway, it's still, it's still.
Yeah, it is,
and it's and I've always loved the landscape as well. And then later, of course, I went to the west. I used to hitchhike a lot around Ireland.
Now,
so
do you pack a tape recorder with you wherever you go, just in case?
I don't not anymore.
Not anymore, but you used
not
to.
Not anymore. I used to, and especially going to Ireland, I'd always bring some recording device, whatever. It could be the the little mini disc or whatever. And I have interviews that I haven't been able to do anything with still. I've got heaps of mini discs and stuff, and I keep everything. I've got, of course, Michael Fassbender. That's still there.
Yeah, that's a prize.
I've got a great archive, which is a complete chaos. But anyway, I used to, yes, and I'd always, whenever something interesting comes up, I remember being on a boat and going. What was it? It was whale watching once, but the other trip on a boat where I got quite seasick was out to the Skelligs. You see these rocks in the southwest, is it? The Skelligs, and I recorded all kinds of stuff because I thought that's probably the only time I ever do this trip, and I might. And there's people up there, these huts that were built in the 9th century, I think, up on the big Skellig, on Skellig Michael. And in the summer, you've students, archaeology or whatever, kind of guiding you through the place or giving you explanation. And I did interviews with all kinds of people because I thought, maybe I can do something. I've never used that material. I used to.
When did this urge to do this kind of thing begin? As a teenager?
What, work in radio or
to interview people? When you were a teenager, maybe?
No, I don't think so. No, it started rather late. I mean, I'm a very late bloomer as far as radio is concerned because I'm a translator. I see. I went to university, studied language, and it's a long story and it would be too boring. But anyway, I started radio at the age of 37 or something, 38.
Okay. So before that, you were working as a translator?
No, I was doing different. So I never really wanted to work as a translator because that means you sit in an office at a computer, and
that's right.
And that's not really my cup of tea. Interpreting, that's another thing. I used to work in trade fairs, so you interpret and you talk to people, but you don't get enough of these jobs. That's a student job, and you can't really make a living on that. And
but you're a technical translator, aren't
that's
you,
right.
Scott?
You can make a living at that.
Yes, you can. That, of course.
The whole time.
Yeah,
There's
of course.
like no contact with anybody.
Yeah, I'm talking about the nice jobs that I really enjoyed. Interpreting for people, say in a trade fair or whatever. But no, sitting at the computer all day and then technical. I admire the work you do, but it wouldn't be.
So when did you?
Occasionally, yes. A bit here, a bit there. I wouldn't mind. But
when did you finally say enough of that?
Well, see, I never really worked as a translator. My first job after university was for the Goethe Institute in Mannheim. So I was looking after the foreign students from all over the world, being a social worker and a secretary, that kind of thing, because I wasn't a teacher. I didn't train to teach German as a foreign language. And next job was for the British Consulate General in Frankfurt. Okay. And that was the only time I actually worked as a translator and personal assistant for the drug liaison officers.
Okay.
Nobody, you didn't know they existed, did you? No. I can't talk about that because that was the trouble. I could never talk about my work.
Yeah.
But anyway, and but that was office, and I thought, Jesus,
coming back,
I need people.
So, how did you make the transition to the media?
Right.
Yeah.
I think it was. I always thought I have so many stories, right? From travelling, and I used to go to Ireland a lot, in Italy, and then I've been to Colombia and different places, and always have these stories in my head. And I always thought, well, I'd love to write, but I can't do that, But my little sister, she's 5.5 years younger than me. She was already in radio and television mainly. She started with radio, but then switched quickly to television. And I'd be sitting there thinking, Jesus, I'd love to do that, but I can't do that. I wouldn't be able. And then I found this course, and that's what brought me to Oldenburg, where I live. A course called Campus Radio.
Where's that?
It was,
in Oldenburg?
It doesn't exist anymore, but it did at the time. That was 99. I came to Oldenburg to do this 1-year course, which was journalism, mostly radio, a big focus on radio. And that's where I started. And the people teaching us were people that worked with the NDR, with Radio Bremen, with different
So you
different
just-
newspapers. So it was, and when we had a 1 hour program on, or broadcast rather, on Radio Bremen, the old Radio Bremen 2, every Saturday for 1 hour. And that's what got me
So when you
started.
think about interviewing when you first started, all the media and platforms that were available when you first started versus today, has anything changed, or has your approach and mindset to interviewing people stayed the same from beginning to end?
No, I don't think it has changed.
It hasn't
I mean, I have
changed.
more security, of course,
Yeah.
with more experience, and and in the beginning, I remember for the first, whatever you call it, a reportage, I don't have the technical vocabulary in English to describe what I do, but, a report.
Yeah.
You go out and you interview somebody, and this was during the course. And so I went to, I think it was Rasted, and did this interview with your man, and I came back and I typed it all out. 45 minutes or whatever of interview, and I typed it all out, and then I looked at what can I use, And I didn't know where to start.
Yeah.
I just didn't know, Of course, it's different, You do an interview. If you're doing this kind of reporting, I'm not talking about the talks that are
talks,
broadcast as
reporting.
a talk, So yeah, but my approach wouldn't be
Any different?
much different. No.
What do you think of when you see these people now with their GoPros and they've got their GoPro with the camera and they're going everywhere and they're broadcasting themselves live on social media, on Facebook? What do you think of that?
I don't know. I don't do social
You
media.
don't do social media. You're strictly radio.
No,
The thing
I'm-
is, so many people call themselves journalists these
Yes,
days,
I
but
know. Yeah.
they're not really. I mean, in my opinion, to be called a journalist, you actually have had to have studied it in some form. It's okay to take a microphone or a camera or something, but you need to see the whole picture and the whole technique.
Well, same maybe with the translator. That is not protected. Anybody can call them
That's right.
call themselves a translator, but it is, I mean, I went to university to become a translator.
Okay.
So there's,
So when you began, you would have been working with the old-fashioned tape, the quarter-inch tape, spools of tape.
Yeah, but
Cassettes.
at the very beginning, you mean tape? You mean with the engineers?
Yeah.
to cut
Did
it
you
out?
actually cut that yourself?
No, I didn't.
No?
No.
Oh.
And it was starting to go away when I started, right, in 2000. And then after this course, I'd immediately, got the first jobs.
All right. Well,
But I still, I did do my first reports using the old band machine.
well, that's how
or
I
what you call it,
started,
tape.
I started
Yeah.
because I couldn't get a staff job in the BBC, and I was so desperate to get it because I was a teacher, and I wanted to get out of teaching, and they said, "Okay, come and join us." And it was sort of, they called it casual labour on a sort of short-term contract. And my first job,
another word for not
was
getting paid.
by the side of all the tape
Slavery.
machines, but in
Yeah.
studios, there were some buckets. And these buckets we used to put the waste tape in. So all the bits of tape the producers or reporters didn't put in their items went into the bucket.
Right.
But the boss, being so mean, you see, couldn't throw this away. So all the longer bits were joined back together again to make another reel of tape. And it was my job to go around all the bins and stick all the tape back
There you
together.
go. Great, and that was the beginning of
That
your
was the
career in the
beginning.
BBC.
career, and look where you are now.
Yeah, the BBC's bin man.
But if I remember, I'm not an interviewer, I'm not a journalist, but I remember I was doing some course and the question was, if you had to interview anyone or you had to talk to someone, so on your bucket list, who would it who would you want to speak to? And I remember I didn't have to think about it. My interview would have been with Maya Angelou, now dead and gone. But
Michelangelo.
Maya Angelou. She is a famous poet. Yeah, not Michelangelo. Yeah, he's a little
She's dead
dead.
and gone.
Yeah. She passed away a couple of years ago, and but she was a poet laureate and absolutely brilliant. And she just had a way of weaving words. And one of my passions is fiction writing, so I loved her. And then it was like 10 questions that you would ask this person, and actually none of them had to do with writing. It was like, what's your favorite movie? Who would you like to meet as and that kind of got me on to this guy Lipton, who does interviews. It's called, if you're familiar, anyone out there is familiar with American TV, it's called Inside the Actor's Studio, where they get actors and famous people on stage. This guy Lipton. And he asks them questions. And the questions, yes, he may ask them one or two to do with their career, but many of them are straight out of left field. It'll be like your idea of a perfect sunset and what's not. But what came out at the end of it was you actually learned more about the person you're interviewing than asking the direct questions. So it turns out that his interview technique is based on another interview technique that was developed by, someone long ago. Listeners out there will go to Wikipedia and find it. But I found that as a fascinating interview technique, especially when you're dealing with someone famous, trying to get into their psyche and what makes them tick. And yeah, so
I think the
good on ya.
trouble with that could be that, because I see people on the red carpet, the Alderbrook Film Fest, and there's, these very young people, and they don't even know who they're talking to. The people pass by on the red carpet and think, oh, it must be somebody famous, so they ask them questions like, have you got a new film in the fest, or whatever. They don't even know the name. Yeah. So, it's really easy to... But piss people off. So,
this isn't a spontaneous, it isn't, that isn't done, this technique that Lipton uses, it's not done in that kind of spontaneous setting where it's on the go. In settings like that, you do want to know who you're wearing and, who made your shoes and stuff like that. This is... like what we're doing now, it's a concerted, researched interview. You sit down and you speak to them. But the other thing I also noticed is that the interviewee, the person being interviewed, it kind of gets them more relaxed. And you get these Freudian slips that come out during the interview that really does show who they are and what they're like. So that interview technique, anyone out there, if you know the real name of this interview technique, feel free to, drop a line on YouTube and let us know. But
Well, to anybody who's just joined us and wondering what this is all about, we are talking to broadcaster from Bremen radio and television station, Christine Hunfeld, who has won the German prize for the best radio interview this year. So Christine is here talking about her work. And Christine, we've talked about your past. What about the future? Do you have any ambitions to go on to other things?
Not really. I'm quite happy with what I do. When I started out, I thought what I really wanted to do, what I thought I was going to do or wanted to do was either write for the travel pages of Die Zeit, right? I would have been one thing, or work for the Weltspiegel or Auslandsjournal and stuff like that. The ambition to do television, I suppose, would have been there. But because I really didn't have a strong connection with radio, I used to switch it off because it used to piss me off, chit-chat, and ads and stuff. But I really got into radio and I started listening to radio a lot, and I still do when I, travel. I drive around Germany. I've just come back from Mannheim for the film festival, so I listen to all the different radio stations along the way, and... same in Switzerland or Italy or England and Ireland. I love listening to radio, and I quite like it. So I don't really have the ambition to, I'm not a very ambitious person.
Are you when you listen?
I don't need to go anywhere else.
Are you listening as a sort of a professional thing? Oh no, if I did that, no, I wouldn't do it that way. I would do it this way.
I talk to my radio in the kitchen if I hear something I don't like. I say,
Yeah.
Who is your favorite interviewer? Who's your favorite interviewer? When you're listening to the radio, who do you go, oh yeah, I like how he or she interviews. I really want to turn on and listen to
Well,
him.
that's a hard one, really. But, I'd say one of my colleagues, actually, I really love listening to her. Her name's Katrin Kremer, and she is, the way she does interviews is lovely. You might know her because she comes to Oldenburg sometimes to do we've got this Herbstgäste or Frühlingsgäste series on Radio Bremen 2, which is mostly work for the in there as well. But and the way she does interviews is really fantastic.
What do you admire about the way she does interviews?
She's got a way of, she prepares really, really well. She goes out of her way to prepare, especially with these guests that they're usually well-known people, She might, if they're from somewhere not too far away, she might go there and talk to, the old teachers or relatives or whatever, But anyway, the way she, I don't know, and she's so interested in people, and that is the most important thing, But because you can hear the difference. You can hear I hear the difference, I don't know, I'm a very critical listener, But
you would be.
I think, the listeners that we've got, especially Radio Bremen 2, I know a lot of listeners. I know a lot of people, that don't listen to the station because they know me. But, I meet more and more people when they know what I do. They say, "Oh, you're with them. Oh, I always listen to you."
Radio is a more intimate form, isn't it, than television?
Yeah.
Why do you say that? Why, Barry?
I found that listeners phoning in or they're writing letters, I think you get much more of that closeness than you do with television.
Is it because there are fewer distractions? You don't have the visual, so you hone in on one sense, or is that just the medical practitioner?
Maybe because you're on air a lot longer usually than maybe you have an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours or something on the air, and in television it's not quite so much, maybe. I don't know. Okay. But one thing with television, you can be very, very famous. But you can be distant as well at the same time.
Yeah. But usually when you're sitting down watching television, you've got the remote in your hand. This would be a guy thing, watch the TV with the remote in their hand and never put it down.
I never even had a remote, or they don't work or whatever, I don't mind getting up from that. I don't
TV.
watch telly anyway.
Just going back to your career, Christine, because you mentioned that in effect you were a late starter getting into broadcasting. So what would your advice be to people watching if they... they're no longer teenagers or in their early 20s and they wish they'd done this or that. What would you tell them?
What people who might want to get into radio or just anything?
Or any job, really. Because you switch jobs quite late on.
Yes, but then I've always switched jobs. I never did just one thing. And I don't know. What I do tell them is that you don't absolutely need to know what you want to do by the time you're 30, because I didn't. Because, I did a lot of working for the Goethe Institute with all these people from all over the world. It was brilliant. I loved it. For 4.5 years, I loved it. And I was overqualified and underpaid, and I didn't give a shit, But then, after 4.5 years, I thought, well, you might want to move somewhere else. Anyway, but it took me... There was a time when I didn't know what I was going to do, and I knew that I didn't want to be translator. I didn't want to sit in an office all day and sit at a computer. But I didn't know what else. I didn't know because I was qualified. But there weren't any jobs for translators anyway. You looked at the papers. I could have been a secretary speaking 2 or 3 languages and being... So... But when I started in radio, it took me, even during this course, it took me quite a while to figure out that, actually, yes, this is what I want to do. And I'm not even that bad at it. But it took a while, even, halfway through the course. It took forever, and I was already 37, 38, whatever. So what I would tell young people is, well, it's different because, I was born in 62 and my A-levels was in 81. So now I think it's a lot harder because they're expected to know what they want to do by the time they're 16. And work on that.
Christine, we're glad you made the switch.
Well, thank you.
And the award that you won says that actually actually, you are good at it. You're very good at
And
it.
going full circle right to the very beginning of our chat, the book, Dominic's book.
Yes, I'll hold it up again. Can you see it there?
It's
in the
called
camera?
Unter Palmen als Stahl, which literally means
under steel palm
under the
trees, palm
under
trees
the
made from
steel.
steel, and it's
Yeah.
actually a park
Yeah.
where he used to sleep on a bench, which was better than sleeping on the floor. And he spent a lot of time there, and he used to sleep under these palm trees made of steel, and he used to read a lot. He read a lot, and he wrote, and he started writing, and he's actually got a blog or something for the Hamburger Morgenpost now, so he writes for the Hamburger Morgenpost. And he also had a job teaching in the school that kicked him out years ago, working with difficult kids or kids that have difficulties, the troubled kids. So that's what the latest I know.
Christine, we look forward to your next stunning...
And I didn't bore you, you sure?
You didn't bore us at
Not a
all.
second.
Thank you very much for joining us today. Wonderful.
you.
Thanks for having me.
Christine Unfeld there.
So,
A little pause
yeah.
because we're waiting to switch cameras.
Okay, all right. The technical side of
We got
stuff.
there.
Yeah,
We got there in the end.
Yep. Okay. So, wonder what to cook for your evening meal.
Yeah, I'm wondering.
You're wondering?
Yeah.
Well, I never wonder because I am the anti-kitchen woman. However,
But you like food.
Oh yeah, it's my second love after my husband. However, if you're wondering what to cook, a typical German dish would be nice. And in the new year, German chefs will be showing you how to do just that.
That's right. And one of them is the top German chef, Torben Grübnau. He's leading a team representing Lower Saxony in the Culinary World Cup right now, taking place right now until the 28th in Luxembourg. Think of the Football World Cup. Well, this is the competition to find the very best culinary creations in several categories of the year. Barry spoke to Torben earlier today before he set out for Luxembourg, and that's what we're going to hear.
Also, I'm the team manager and chef trainer of the regional team of Lower Saxony. Total currently we have 14 chefs in the team from all over Lower Saxony, and they cook together in the Culinary World Cup in Luxembourg. And today we are stay in Hanover and prepare for the competition, all the foods and so.
Oh, so today you're still in Germany, and then you go to Luxembourg. Then is that right?
Yes, we are today. We prepare all our food and equipment, and on the 28th November we travel to Luxembourg and had there the competition with the team.
So I don't suppose, Torben, you can tell us what dishes you're creating. Is that a top secret?
Today, yes. We
I thought so.
no, we have in the battle we prepare a table with different plates and desserts and so petit fours. So and on the 28th we show our products and dishes in Luxembourg, and then the judges will look at this and say it's good or not so good.
So am I right in saying you're concentrating on the sweets rather than the main course?
Also, the competition works in two parts. One is from the chefs, and the other part is for the pâtissiers. And for the sweet part, from our pâtissiers, they had to prepare 4 desserts and 1 showpieces. We make a showpiece with a height of 1,5 meters with chocolate and sugar. And it's a statue from Lower Saxony. with the three with a nice woman on there, and we show these things. And they had to prepare 4 typical petit fours from Lower Saxony.
So how many chefs are taking part from the whole of Germany?
From whole of Germany, we start with 5 teams. We have a regional team from Berlin-Brandenburg, a regional team of Lower Saxony, and then we have the 3 national teams, the junior national team, the senior national team, and the military national team. 5 teams from Germany go to Luxembourg and fight into the competition in this, yeah.
And do you find that not only the countries differing in what they offer, but also the chefs from the different regions in Germany, do they usually offer dishes that reflect their own regions?
Yes, it's in our team. We said from Lower Saxony we have a lot of products here. We have fish, we have wild, all the different kinds of Lower Saxony. We have different products, and every chef in my team brings a product from his region to us, and we create from this products then our dishes.
In the past, how has Germany done in other years? Has Germany done well? Because Germany has a lot of really good chefs.
Yes, the German teams in the last 20 years, they was ever in the top 10 of the world in these competitions.
And
the top 5, there were also Sweden and teams from Asia. And the German teams are in the top 10.
And
we have the last big the last big battle they won, the German teams were in Singapore in 2006, and at this time they're only in the top 10.
So teams are coming from all over the world, literally all over.
Yes. Over in Luxembourg, for example, they start 7-1 nations.
Yeah. And it's a bit like the Football World Cup, this, isn't it? I mean, it's big.
It's a big World Cup. I think all the participants in these battles are, I think, 1,000 chefs are cooking against each other.
Wow.
In Luxembourg.
I bet that uses a fair amount of gas, yeah? 1,000 chefs cooking?
Yeah, against each other in Luxembourg in different categories. In regional category, in national category, in to make show pieces, in vegetable carving. There's a different competitions there.
Who gets to eat all this food that you all prepare, all these 1,000 chefs? What do you do with it?
Okay, there's 2 parts of competitions of this. The one part is only an optical judging. So we prepare a dish, bring it to Luxembourg and show it this. And this don't want, nobody eats this dishes. Only for optical judging.
It's just to look at.
Then only for looking, yeah. So, and it's a half of 1,000 people that make this competition. The other people cook in the hot kitchen. They had to prepare a menu for 110 persons. And this we're eating from the from the Messebesucher, visitors. The visitors from the mess are eating this menus.
Right. Well, if there's
very well, no?
if there's any left over, Torben, you can always bring it here.
Hmm?
You can always bring the leftovers here. If you've got any spare, you can send it to us. I don't think you heard me.
Yeah, I hear you very bad.
Yeah,
Can you talk louder or so?
I can talk louder.
Yes, so I can understand you better.
Okay, well, look, I'd like to wish you and your team all the very best in these championships, in the Culinary World Cup. Torben, thank you very much for joining us.
Yes, thanks. Thanks. I will give the wishes to my team, and I hope we bring a gold medal at home. Huh?
Let's hope so. Torben, thank you very much.
Bitteschön.
As Barry said, that was just an interview with Torben Klupnau, who's leading a team of German chefs in the Culinary World Cup, now being held in Luxembourg. As we said earlier, next year we'll have a series of German recipes for you to try out.